Hello, fellow songwriters, and welcome to the 7th episode of the How Songs Are Made podcast, where we talk to notable artists about their songwriting process. I am your host, Trey, Xavier, and today we're going to be talking to the band ALLEGAEON about their forthcoming album, DAMNUM. Today's episode of the podcast is sponsored by me and my songwriting course, Complete Rock and Metal Songwriting. If you're like most guitarists, you've got a million riffs and no complete finished songs. That's why I created this course to show you how to take any musical idea and turn it into a fully fleshed out song with all the trimmings. To enroll in the course, you're going to want to hit the link in the description or head to howsongsaremade.com. Also, I just remembered to hit record in Pro Tools, and this is the reminder to the boys in the band to do the same. I also wanted to let you know that this podcast isn't just a live stream anymore. It's also now a regular old audio podcast that you can find on all the usual podcast services. Or you can just head over to howsongsaremade.podcast.com. And there's going to be new episodes up there every single Wednesday. So far, we've got the intro and the first episode live on there now. Tomorrow, or Wednesday rather, we'll have the second episode, which was with another handsome genius boy. I totally just blanked on who it was. Anyway, you know him. It was Brody. It's Brody Utley. So check that one out, and be sure to hit subscribe on all those podcast services wherever you get them. You know, Spotify, Apple Music, and stuff. You can follow on there. The more people we've got on there following, we see the numbers. The more I get to do this, and that's your support is very, very, very important in making this happen. So get that going on, and not to ramble on too much, but we also have merchandise. There is now How Songs Are Made merch that you can find at the link in the description. Also, I'll be wearing some hopefully next week. I don't know how long does it take to get here. I ordered it yesterday. So before we get the boys on here, here's a little bit about their album DAMNUM. First of all, it's pronounced DAMNUM. You say the N. This is the first episode of the podcast where we're going to be talking about an album that isn't out yet. It comes out February 25th, so I put a link in the description also where you can pre-order and pre-save it and all that stuff. It's going to be the band's 6th full-length album. It's their 3rd one with Riley McShane on vocals, and it's the first one with their newest member of the band, Jeff Saltzman, playing drums. They've recorded it with Dave Otero at Flatline Audio in Denver, so it's going to sound awesome. They have thus far released 2 singles from it, the first one being Into Embers and the other one of Beasts and Worms. I'm not sure that was the order in which they came out, but and they each have an accompanying awesome music video. And the last cool fact about the album is that it is fucking cool. It's so good. It's so good. I was lucky to have been able to listen to the whole thing. And you guys are in for a treat. So, please welcome Riley, Mikey, and Greg from ALLEGAEON.
Hey, dude. What's up?
Hello. I said Riley's name. He's not here yet. He'll be joining us a little bit late.
He's a vocalist. They're always late.
Yeah. He said he'd be here at a certain time.
They have to carry it.
He also said he was going to help with load-in, so...
Yeah, exactly.
What are you going to do? There's only so much. So, where are you guys joining us from currently? Where are you located?
I'm in Ottawa right now.
Yeah.
Oh.
And then I'm in Denver.
Denver, Ottawa. Oh, so you
or Norway.
You didn't have to go. You're wherever you. It doesn't matter where you're in the fucking forest.
I could be in the woods with my friends in Norway. I could be in Florida watching Vince Neil fall.
Damn.
Or Titanic.
My Zoom game is not strong enough, nearly at all. we're here to talk about your songwriting process for the new album. I'm very excited to hear it because there are, this is the 7th episode of this podcast, and I am consistently learning new things about how people write songs, and everybody seems to do it slightly differently. Some people drastically differently. And here's that boy. Here he is. What up?
Sorry, I'm late, guys. How y'all doing?
Good so far. You sound a little buzzy or something.
Shit. Hold on, let me try to fix that.
That's all right. Do it. I'm just gonna keep yakking.
I just want to comment on how amazing Mikey's haircut is. I've never seen it with a shaved head, and it looks good.
I've actually never had a buzz cut before. I've actually never had a buzz cut before. My mom hated them.
Well,
she got really mad when I told her.
I usually rag on you guys for your haircuts, but I think I'm in favor, man. That looks really nice.
Well, yeah, because it's one of the two like approved like metal dude haircuts.
Oh yeah,
that have long hair or nothing.
The cranky old school guy.
So I don't know if I can fix this buzz while I'm recording. Let me try something real quick.
It's okay. Do it. Do what you got to do. So, I was saying before you got here, Riley, how much your band sucks and how I'm not looking forward to this at all.
Yeah, terrible band, terrible album, terrible people, all around.
Honestly, more than anything else, I think that you guys, there's something about you. The stuff that you do tickles me in all the right ways. It does all the stuff that I'm always, all your songs do the things that I'm always fucking telling everybody to do. So I do a lot of song critiques. I get a lot of just not very interesting, especially harmonically interesting songs. And you guys have awesome chord changes in your music. Really interesting, spicy chord changes, cool, just fun shit. Beyond the usual like fucking Iron Maiden chords, like basic bitch shit. And I'm very curious to know how you go about coming up with that shit. So very excited for this episode. All that to say, the question, the first question, really the only question, and all the other questions are follow-up questions, which is, what was the songwriting process like for this album, and how is it different from how you've done it in the past, if at all?
So for this one, it kind of started the same way as most of the other records, where it's usually like Greg and I writing separately, like at home, and then coming together once it's like getting closer and kind of figuring out what the album is sounding like. But this time, since we had more time with everything being canceled and all that, we were able to actually get together as a whole group like a couple times. I think it was 6 months out from when we went to record, and actually went through each song like in our DAWs and basically deconstructed them, reconstructed them, and had be a much more collaborative effort from like just in the songwriting like instrumental part this time around. And I think it created a much more like cohesive sound on the overall album.
Yeah, absolutely. And sorry, I think this buzz is probably still going to be here, unfortunately, but it won't be on the recorded version of my my audio. So sorry, live viewers. But
can you just turn down the output a scotch, because you're
yeah, of course, no problem.
Through a little bit.
It keeps telling me I got to ask you permission to record. By the way.
Does it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, I give it. I give you permission. I grant it. Does it say how you're supposed to ask me?
It's something with Zoom. I get that a lot in my classes. I think you have to go in and like click on Greg and do that. I don't know. It's weird.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well. Okay. Sorry. Go ahead, Riley. I'll figure that out while you.
I was just saying. Yeah. Usually, at least for my parts, and kind of for most of the other instruments, it would be like Greg or Mikey would write a song, and then like that was it. That was just like the song, and any changes that would generally happen in the studio, and then everybody else would kind of come in and just kind of put their parts on top of it and make it work. But with this one, it was much more of a like, okay, we get the songs and now we take the time to be like, okay, does this work? Does this not work? Like, what do you guys think? Are you, cool with this part? What can we do to change it? And a lot of times I think that one of the reasons that maybe we've avoided doing it for so long like that is because when you have that many cooks in the kitchen, you can lead to a lot of like clashing opinions and butting of heads. And while that happened like a little bit kind of early on, we pretty quickly established, like, if you have a critique, you need to also come prepared with a suggestion on how to, fix it or make it like what it is you're hearing in your head or whatever. And once that kind of got established, we avoided what I think is the biggest pitfall of collaborative writing, which is just where someone comes in and is like, yeah, this sucks, I don't like it. And then that's just kind of where it ends. It took a little bit of getting used to at first, but I think once we hit our stride with it, like Mikey said, we ended up with an album that feels like it was written by a unit rather than like two different songwriters.
Yeah, I kind of liked it to like being back in preschool and learning how to share. I was like, what? It's mine. So
no, Greg, share the rips with the class.
Really good learning process. I think that the more that we do that, if that's how we're going to continue to do things in the future, we will get better at it too. And now knowing we can do this, I think I'm excited to see what we'll do within this new way of doing things going forward.
I like that because I think that sometimes I would call it the up and down side to each version of songwriting as a group, as an individual. There's like as an individual, you can write something really super cohesive, and not have to like have too many cooks or like have to use somebody's part because you feel obligated or you want them to have buy-in or something like that. And then writing as a group can be complete fucking chaos. But then you could also wind up with something that everybody is pretty stoked on because everybody had a hand in it. So it sounds like this was kind of a cool happy medium between those two. You didn't, you've got the majority of the work done by one person, it sounds like, but then you're allowing the rest of the band to have a hand in it. So you it sounds like it was the best of both worlds to an extent.
Yeah.
So that's
absolutely.
really cool to hear. So it sounds like though you present pretty fleshed out songs. Each one of you will sort of be like, here you go, here's something with all the parts and all of that. You do like, what does it generally look like by the time you present it to the band? Is it like a demo with programmed drums and all the guitars and everything?
Yeah, it's usually a full like fleshed out with at least like drums and guitar part demo, and then that's when we'll kind of like go in and see like, oh, this part like could be better, or like Greg and I have done this in the past a lot. That has helped with like solo sections where be like, okay, so here's a solo section, what do you feel about it? And it's like, oh, I'm not really sure what I can do here, let's see if we can change it up to give it more like melodic characteristics or more things that can just lead to a better section. And then we've also had times where like I hit a wall or something and we just pass it off. That's also worked.
Okay, so yeah, you sort of need somebody else to come in and tee up the next idea because you're stuck. Cool.
That's actually some of our favorite songs. I think that's happened.
I think that was Genocide and Proponent 3. Yeah.
That was really cool the way those happened. They always turn out to be some of my favorites when it's like that. Because then you're super invested in the other person, what they've already done. You're like, oh, dude, that's so cool. We have to do that. let me take a shot at it because your part's super rad. So I think you're both kind of like very invested in the creation at that point.
Yeah. And then I think with this album, since we were all kind of doing that, it's like what you said, like everyone feels a lot more invested in the overall product at the end.
Yeah. So what is the process, because you guys are sort of writing a lot by yourself, what does it generally look like to take a song from whatever your initial first idea is through to this mostly fleshed out demo? Like, how do you generally go about it? Maybe think of like an example from the album, like soup to nuts. And I want to hear from both of you, and then also Riley about how you do the lyrics. But first, from Greg and Mikey, because you guys are working independently, I imagine you might have slightly different ways of going about it.
Like for me, there's not one way that this happens. It kind of like there's multiple ways where it's like I have like a theme for like maybe lyrical content that will inform, oh, how can I try to capture that with music? That's happened before. The other one is where it's just, you know, the best version where you just shit out a song, right? Those are the best, right? Where it's like completely effortless, get a song done in like a day. And then the other ones where it's like, I have no fucking clue. Let me just like I have like a writing kind of like exercise I do where I just get a whole bunch of rests, pick a mode or something and fill it in, maybe like, and just start erasing notes or going, oh, that's cool, changing up the rhythm. And then it's more of it's a lot less of a natural way to write, but you can come up with some stuff that you would never naturally come up with.
Mm-hmm.
So you're doing more interesting things. You know, it could be based on a chord progression. It could be based on the opening track, Bastards of the Earth, the intro classical guitar trio, the theme. We had the guy that does a lot of the orchestra stuff for Legion in the past, Joe Barris, had written this orchestra kind of intro. And I took the themes from that and separated them and did a Baroque counterpoint between three guitars. So I had like and it's kind of weird that we never even used the orchestra part at the end of the day for Joe. But yeah, just like you take there's a melody and then you can stretch it between multiple instruments, and then when they come together, it's cool. It's like a puzzle. Like one guitar by themselves won't give you the full picture until all three come together, and then you get the full melody. And then, you know, once we did that, you know, it was like, oh, cool. We can kind of take the two main voices of that and separate those by guitar. And then you have kind of a counterpoint for the band entering. And then stylistically, we kind of made that like a little black metal, would you guys say? Kind of Mr. Norway.
Oh wait, Riley hasn't seen my backgrounds.
Beautiful. I love
it. But yeah, I think have a very similar process to like what Greg said, where it could be multiple different ways. I've noticed if I hear something and something that's like not okay, I need to turn off the
Sorry, his head popped out right over your shoulder.
But yeah, it could be just like sitting there and just like randomly play like riffs, like, oh, that's cool, let's keep going. And sometimes it could take like a day to write a song, sometimes like 4 years. Like I think Into Embers the intro was actually something I wrote like 2016, and then wasn't in like the right, like didn't finish it then, found it when we were getting like doing stuff. It was like, oh, I know exactly what I could do with this now. And
wasn't A Beast and Worms that was left over from Apoptosis, right?
Yeah,
that was technically written for Apoptosis. But yeah, we changed a bunch of stuff in that writing retreat, so now it like doesn't feel like it's a old song. But yeah, like lots of different ways. I've noticed if I hear something in like say a different genre or something like that, maybe like a pop song or something cool where it's like, oh, I wonder if that could be recreated in a certain way uh, in this style. So it's like try and make it somewhat better than just Slayer riffs, but lower tuned.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things to do is play with forms. So like
Yeah.
traditionally, Allegion's kind of been a pop like form band with like chorus goes here and stuff like that. But like playing with that where it's like verse, pre-chorus, chorus, solo, and building them in different, less predictable ways. That's always fun too. And I know we've kind of experimented with that on Apoptosis. There was songs that didn't have a chorus, and just doing, plugging those different pieces into different orders can be a lot of fun as well.
Yeah, song structure is super important. I think people overlook that a lot, and it's cool to hear that you're really thinking about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, not a whole lot of riff salad going on within a Legion, which is something I like because it like avoids the pitfall of a lot of other, technical metal bands, is that it's like, not just 10 riffs for 4 minutes and that's the song. Usually a lot of structure involved. One thing I wanted to mention that I've heard Greg say in other interviews about like song inspiration that I always thought was really cool whenever he brings it up is I've heard him say like, oh, sometimes I'll have like a topic for a song and then I try to figure out how to recreate that topic in music. So like we have songs about like natural disasters and stuff, and he's like, okay, this song is all about like a tsunami and then like an earthquake or whatever. Like, how do I capture the essence of those things in a song? And I think that that's like a really cool way to approach songwriting because it's very theatrical. And so you end up with these big epic sounding songs. Yeah, movie score type of stuff. Exactly. So I wanted to drop that in there because I always feel like it's worth mentioning in these types of discussions. But for me, lyrically, usually I'll hear the song, I'll identify the sections, I'll get, a feel for what it's going to feel like, from A to Z. And then I will just kind of like ad lib on top of it for a while. I'll play around with different patterns as I'll stick the verse on loop and then play around with different patterns, figure out how to lead into the next section. I'll usually use like random poetry as lyrics for when I'm doing this. Like I'll pull up like Poe or Shakespeare or Emerson or something like that. Just something that has like generally pretty consistent like rhyme structures and patterns and syllabic things that I can play around with. And then while I'm ad-libbing, I'll usually just like kind of read from one of those, so I'm not just ad-libbing, into the, over the section. So there's actually words, so I can get a feel for what it's going to sound like using these types of patterns with these types of syllables and stuff like that. And then once I have a pattern developed, I'll move on to the next section, ad infinitum, and then just kind of do that until the song is done, and then go in and start writing my own lyrics. For this album, the lyric writing process was a lot easier for me because I just kind of wrote what I was feeling in the moment. In the past, Allegiant being like a science themed band, I've had to kind of cater what I'm writing to the subject matter and like figure out a way to be like, okay, like here's an interesting topic or scientific thing that I can write about and turn kind of into a metal song. Let me apply my writing style lyrically into this framework. Basically with this album I didn't really have to do that. I was just kind of like, I'm just going to write what I want to write and see how it comes out. And so it gave me a lot more room to play with patterns because I knew that I didn't really have to fit a mold, I guess. But yeah, usually it's patterns first and then lyrics, and then once the lyrics are down, I'll play around with different ways to execute them, which words to place emphasis on, which parts to hold out or keep short or whatever to kind of match the dynamic of the song. And then once we're in the studio, well, I guess there's another step before that. With this last one, I presented like my demos to the band, and everybody kind of gave their input, being like, yeah, like, this doesn't quite feel right, or, let's change up this part, maybe try this or this type of vocal. Because that's the other thing, is it's like, am I going to do lows here? Am I going to do highs here? Am I going to do gutturals or mid-range or cleans or whatever? And so got a bunch of feedback from the guys being like, try this style here, try maybe doing this pattern here. And then once we all agree on something and we're in the studio, stuff continues to change from there, because you never really know, for people listening that aren't super familiar with the recording process, vocals always come last. Because that's when the songs are done, like, what all the dynamics are going to look like, what everything's going to sound like. And then, it could be a very different picture than what you were looking at while you were writing the lyrics. So stuff will change, I'll add words, I'll take stuff away. It'll be like, oh, well, this line doesn't really need to repeat, or things like that. And then once all that is done, you have, pretty much the finished product as far as vocals go.
Sweet. That's really interesting to hear. I love sci-fi stuff and the sciencey, heady shit. I always tend to, I think most people tend to sort of connect more to personal things in general. Metal seems to generally also attract people who don't connect in the same way to lyrics in the ways that other people do, and I think that's really cool in itself. But also, I've always for example, I really love power metal, right? But I always kind of was whatever about like the Dungeons and Dragons, like kind of I like that kind of stuff. But then I heard Sonata Arctica, and it was almost like, I don't want to say emo, but like very, very deeply personal lyrics. And I was like, oh, you're allowed to do that in metal. Oh, yeah, I like that a lot. Let's have more of that, please. So that's really interesting to hear that you took a more personal approach than writing about your, bowel movements. That's pretty personal too. But or like whatever, whatever
You can
shit
make bowel movements metal. You just have to throw some big words in there, like gastrointestinal, and then
Yeah,
all of a sudden it's like, yeah, this is sick.
Oh god, can you please write a song about my IBS?
Yeah.
Consistency. So but what I'm hearing is that in general, you get a track and you are putting your parts on top of that for the most part. It's not you're not like working it from the ground up. It's you've got something, basically a finished product to work with. Although it sounds like on this one you guys were working it a little bit more so throughout. Were there any parts of the songs that wound up getting changed because of something you wanted to do on vocals?
Yes,
Yeah,
definitely.
I think there were.
There were a couple verses for sure that I was like, look, I'm having a really hard time like matching up like what I'm doing vocally, either before or after this part with this verse. Can we try to change up like the verse a little bit, like make it feel a little bit more open and less like punchy, because the punchiness of the verse is causing like my vocal performance to be a little bit more like stuttered and feel less like flowy, like it, like the other parts that precede it or come after it. So there were definitely a few parts like that got changed. There were also a few vocal parts that like we wrote kind of as a group, like in Called Home, for example, like the big part in the middle with all the different vocal layers. We all kind of sat down together at like a writing retreat and just like hashed that one out, everybody in the same room being like, oh, well, try this or try that or try this and try that. And so there's definitely a
The
few
Legion
parts that got
Barbershop
changed.
Quartet.
Yes, exactly. A few parts got changed to accommodate vocals for sure, but it's not something that never really happens is I'm like, oh, hey, I have an idea for like a vocal motif or like a pattern or a hook. Let's write something around this. You know, just because with metal, vocals are usually so percussive. And even though there are a lot of like clean vocal hooks on this record, they were still kind of like structured around the music rather than the other way around. And I've told people that who work in like pop or alt rock and stuff like that, and they're like, oh, that's crazy, because like usually we'll have an artist come to us with this like, oh, hey, I have this like hook in my head that I'm hearing vocally. Can we like structure like a beat around this? So it's interesting seeing that dichotomy between genres.
That's super funny, because I hear a lot of the time it's the other way around, because they'll, a lot of people will make just these fucking weird, wild beats, and that's their whole thing, is they just make beats and then they send it off to somebody who writes the top line.
Right.
And but I guess it would also make more sense, especially for an artist like, pop artists, like a lot of them are dedicated performers. They're super good at singing and dancing and not necessarily writing, and they, just get the best writers to write their shit, and they want a little bit of a taste of the songwriting action. They want their name on the thing so that they can do interviews and be like, yeah, I really felt this one. And not just like it was written by so and so. But that's that's a very interesting. Like you said, a dichotomy, different ways that people go about it. Continue. I interrupted.
Yeah. Oh, no, you're good. I was just saying that, metal vocals are usually very percussive, right? And so it's usually like you kind of have to have the music to know how to place your vocal performance. Because the drums are doing something crazy and the guitars are doing something and the bass is doing some, crazy counterpoint to the drums, and like you have your rhythm section doing one thing and the guitar is doing something else. And usually it's all very technical and complicated. And so it's like, yeah, I can, zone in on the rhythm, right? Like I can be like, okay, well, this part's in 4/4, this part's in 5/8, or this part's in whatever, and just kind of like place my main syllables along that. But in order to make it interesting and, varied and give it, some forward momentum for the listener, I have to, kind of structure where I'm placing things to accommodate the song. And that's another thing that I always think about when I'm writing, especially as far as like stylistic approach. If I'm hearing like a super, fast black metal-y sounding riff with like a skank beat on top of it, like I'm not going to do death growls because it just doesn't make sense for the part. Inversely, if I hear something that's like super big and epic and wide open, like I'm gonna probably default to doing cleans on that. And a lot of that is honestly just like a first listen type of thing. It's like when I hear it the first time, I'm like, oh, what'll sound good on this? Always subject to change. But as far as getting back to my original point, so I don't get too far off the rails here, when writing parts, it's usually music first and not vocals first. So
gotcha. All right, so let's see. So you let's see, what did it look like when you guys were collaborating, like once you'd gotten most of the, like you've now presented let's say a song, one of the guitarists, and now you're opening it up to the group, and because like you were saying before, it would be like, all right, here's a song, like this is how it goes, fuck you. But now you're like, all right, what can we do to make this better? Here, I submit my thing to you for inspection and tearing apart. Like, what generally happened next? If let's say whatever song went through the greatest transformation from one step to the next, give me like a little bit of an idea of what went down.
I guess To Carry My Grief would have gone through the biggest transformation.
Yeah.
And that was Riley had a hard time writing over some of
Yeah.
the verse ideas, which are very based in like the mellow death thing, which we're all very different people, so some of us do not get into certain other styles that maybe the guy who wrote it is. So
I hear a mellow death part, and I'm just like, I don't know what to do with this. I don't listen to this genre. This is confusing and strange to me.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, like there was a little bit of that had to be retooled, and just because that one part had to be written, then the flow is completely lost. So then, a lot of parts had to be changed to accommodate that one change. Like, so pretty much, I think the whole song got scrapped except for the bridges. They stayed put, but then everything else got completely changed around just because it wouldn't stand the way it was written with that one part changed. So it's like, if the song doesn't flow, then you're gonna kind of be, I don't know, like I don't have a huge problem with System of a Down, but one of the things that bugs me about that band is sometimes I feel like they pick riffs out of a hat and just try to put them together that I don't like. When as a listener, I feel completely jerked around by the flow. And I mean, I guess that's part of the charm that a lot of people find System of a Down. For me, that's kind of it really takes me out of enjoyment of the music. So when you have to alter one part, I can't, like, it needs to flow in a certain way for me. Like the voice leading and everything has to work, like the chord progressions, the tension, the resolves, they all have to flow in a certain way that if one part changes, you might have to alter a lot of other things around. And I think that was probably the most changed song, right? It was like a completely.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I think
went from mellow to kind of psychroptic.
Yeah.
There are definitely changes, like more subtle ones, like usually the solo section one that we always do, and then like verse riffs. But I noticed on this record we also changed like kind of mentality, be like, hey, so this is a solo section, but does this song actually need this, or would it rather, like, should we have it kind of more focused towards the song itself rather than the kind of like shining moments? So there's 2 songs first time in Legion history that do not have guitar solos, but you can't tell. So
You fucking sellouts.
Yeah.
No
you
solo?
should just hear the next record.
What? What's the point?
Yeah. God. Yeah.
But you wouldn't be able to tell, because then it's like the rest of it is the usual wankery. So it's good.
Craziness.
See, I think that's fucking heroic that you guys were like so focused on making on the song part that you yeeted the fucking solo to make the song better. I love that. I love it. Please say
Eventually,
more.
we're just not even going to play guitar anymore. It's going to be synths and Riley.
Synth
That's
band.
it.
Synth.
I'm going to go home.
It'd be like when Papa Roach released that remix of Last Resort. They like redid the video for it, but everything's all like synthed out and like more modern production. But the guitar players are still there, but they're just kind of like holding the neck, just like vibing. But there's no like playing going on. That's the future.
They're living
for
in the
Allegiant
future.
right there. Yeah.
No hands on my face.
Greg's having an aneurysm.
I know, Greg is just like, I will burn this band to the ground.
You can send out fucking just cardboard cutouts on tour. You could stay home and collect that fucking money.
Yeah, death metal money. All right.
It won't be death metal money anymore though, because it'll all be
That's
synths.
true.
So, is there more money in Synthwave? I have no idea.
Yeah. I think another thing to add to, when things would get changed, everything, Allegiant has always operated, even outside of the creative portion of things, very diplomatically. So it's like a majority rules most of the time. So like if an idea is presented and 3 guys are like, oh yeah, this is sick, and 2 guys are like, meh, not really feeling it, it will usually default to like the majority choice. Sometimes it feels shitty being on the short end of the stick, obviously, but it prevents hangups. You know what I mean? Like it prevents being stuck on a part because it's like, okay, well, I don't like this, but we're just going to move forward with it. And I think that that's also an important part of like when things get presented and changes, you know, need to be made. How are we going to move forward? It's usually done in such a way where it's like, well, here's the ideas, everybody cast a vote. Also, lots of notes on this album. That was something that was kind of unfamiliar territory to me, at least, was it was like many files of like, okay, I'm going to write a timestamp and I'm going to write a note and I'm going to be like, hey, here's this part, you know, maybe do X, Y, or Z for this kind of thing, and then kind of going through the whole song or the whole series of songs and doing that kind of stuff, and then being like, oh, everybody's notes are in the drive, review your notes and all this kind of stuff. So yeah.
Cool. That's so I guess the question then is, in the past, what was it more like? Like how did you guys would just kind of be like, all right, cool, next, like it just would be what it was, and then whoever had written the part, it would just stay and not a lot of back and forth.
Yeah, pretty much.
Sounds
But also,
simpler at
like,
least, but go ahead.
At least with Apoptosis, super rushed with everything.
Yeah.
So like, just the amount of time you need to kind of like do it this way just wasn't available. So
well, I think so for sure was simpler, but I think that what really caused us to kind of have to be like, okay, like we need to reassess how we're doing this, is that like Greg and Mikey's writing styles have always been different. Like you can always tell, like, oh, this is a Greg song, this is a Mikey song, at least before Damnum, in my opinion. And I think that their individual styles became different enough to the point where it was like, this sounds like, well, this almost sounds like two different bands. And so that's kind of where we were like, what if we just like took a more collaborative approach, so we didn't have this like, you know, very obvious disparity between songs. Yeah, and I think that was also a thing, that it was like, yeah, the other way is simpler, but I think that if we do it this way, we might end up with something that sounds a little bit more cohesive.
That's always the such a moment, because you go, well, we thought of a way in which it could be better, and it's so much more time and effort. But then you go like, if this is going to make it better, we have to do it. We have to put in the time and effort. And that both sucks and is great, because then when it works, you go like, oh shit. And now you're going to have to do it every fucking time. That's pretty great to hear. I mean, it's kind of like, Beatles had, you can tell which bits are John and which ones are Paul, sometimes whole songs, sometimes kind of intertwined, and I think that sort of thing is what makes some bands greater than they would have been had they been solo projects, because after the Beatles broke up and you get the solo stuff, it's kind of just, I don't know, it's not that cool. Like there was a balance between the two. John was very fucking weird, Paul was very straightforward, and they kind of like kept each other from being too weird or too boring. And so that's cool to hear that you made you fucking fused a hybrid in the lab. That fits with the science theme. That's the science part of the album.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we all got in that machine from The Fly. And then
yes,
did that.
Yes. I think it's really funny that you said you had a hard time with the mellow death parts, and here's why. This is so dumb. Every single time I see the name of your band, I think of the In Flames song where he says, "Age Ion," which is like a total fucking made up word, but I think of that every single time. It's on like Horacle, I think.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's not where it came from, but
no.
Great. So what is each of your What is each of your favorite song on the album, and why?
Who are we starting with here, guys?
Yeah. Michael, you start.
But mine is probably Only Loss, the end track. Just because I think that was like one of the last ones that was written, and I think it kind of captured what like the whole album was trying to do. I just had kind of some of my favorite like vocal stuff and kind of favorite changes, and all that. And it's super bleak, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
Next.
Mine would be To Carry, just because the whole instrumental section is sick. It's my favorite part of the album. From all the solos put back to back to back.
Every time that part comes on, I'm like, oh, we're in Spain now. España. Buenos dias.
Take a little trip.
I do love that part. I think that my favorite is probably also Only Lost, but for different reasons than Mikey. Except for the bleakness. And the thing is, though, is that I think that I find the bleak outlook lyrically of that song to kind of almost be hopeful in a way. In like press releases and interviews that I've done leading up to this point, a lot of people are like, hey, so the lyrics on this album are like super dark and kind of, you know, bleak and hopeless. Like, is that how you feel? Like, are you just like, oh yeah, like hope is gone, you know, everything is terrible? And I'm like, no, it's like kind of the opposite. You know, what I was trying to set out to do with the lyrics of this album was to more so just like showcase things that like can sometimes be viewed as universal experiences. You know what I mean? Like everybody at one point in their life deals with grief and sadness and anger and, you know, frustration and hopelessness and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, to showcase those things in a way that I feel privileged to be able to do, which is like not only on a platform that people are going to, you know, hear it and be able to listen to it, but also in a way that it's like I'm a writer, you know what I mean? Like I'm a lyricist. Like I have practiced for many years being able to articulate my feelings into words, and a lot of people can't do that. They just feel these things kind of into the void and don't really know where to place them. So when I write something that, you know, ends the album just being like only sorrow, just as always, you know, only loss, only loss, only loss, only loss, like it comes off as very like, oh my god, this is crushingly hopeless, you know what I mean? But at the same time, you know, the mission, I guess, in behind doing that was to be like, yeah, like shit sucks sometimes, but like you're not alone in feeling this type of stuff. And so I like that song kind of gave, you know, an outlet to be like, the whole album really, but that song in particular kind of gave an outlet to be like, here's these things that a lot of people are feeling, here's these, you know, kind of horrible emotions to have to deal with and live through, but like we're all still here, you know what I mean? Like the album's been written and getting released and we're gonna go play shows, and you know, even though you're feeling these things, like it gets better. So yeah.
That's beautiful, man. Beautiful.
Yeah, man.
Really though.
So deep.
That's I think that's a very important distinction for people to make, because I think that especially in metal, people assume that we are all just fucking like just fucking crazy psychos, either like, you know, from like Cannibal Corpse lyrics and death metal gore grind shit, like horror stuff, or like super depressing, like or whatever, these extreme emotions. And people are like, bro, you okay, bro? Like, do we need to call somebody? But it's like, no, like this is it's fantasy, but it's also real, and some of it's more real than others, but it's not necessarily. It's like if you're watching a horror movie, you wouldn't go like, "Oh my God, that man is dead!" And what? Who? Why isn't anyone calling the police? It's like, bro, it's a movie. Like where you know, somebody made it to express a certain feeling. They're not necessarily like a secret psychopath and they want to kill people. Like it's this experience, you know. And I really like you were saying, this deeply personal thing, and being able to express it without it being hopeless. It can still be fucking bleak. It's just real. You're just being real.
Yeah. And it's more than anything, you know, it's less of a call to action to just like mire yourself in being miserable. You know what I mean? More than it's like, oh, hey, I can relate to this. Someone that I was doing an interview with pointed out something interesting where they were like, oh, well, I didn't think that you guys had lost any of the scientific stuff with this album. And I was like, well, how so? And he was just like, oh, well, because it's just not, you know, physics anymore, but it's still very psychological. Like it's very like there's still a lot of really scientific shit in here. It's just expressed from a more personal space, you know, that people can kind of latch onto, rather than just talking about certain topics, you know, like physics or astronomy or stuff like that. It's like, oh, we're talking more about, you know, psychology and you know, neuropathy and stuff like that, which I thought was an interesting take on it, because it wasn't really necessarily what I had set out to do lyrically, but it's cool that, you know, it's just an example of how people will hear this and take it certain different ways. You know, and like you said, metalheads often kind of get, you know, posterized as this like, oh, we're, you know, all bleak, depressed psychopaths with mental problems. But the thing
that's
about
true.
But yeah, kind of. But the thing about that is that like those are the types of people that generally gravitate towards extreme music. You know what I mean? Like, you know, there's a reason that people who are generally, you know, happy-go-lucky, carefree don't listen to brutal death metal. And so, you know, knowing that these are the types of people who are going to gravitate towards these sounds, I feel is just that much more of a reason, I guess, to, you know, present this type of subject matter in a hopefully relatable way, rather than like a, you know, this is life, get used to it type of way.
Yeah. I'm the next thing that I'm curious about is kind of a little bit of a tangent from that, but also sort of relates to the craft side of it, of expressing those things that you're describing, both lyrically and musically. And I get the feeling with this band, unlike some of the other ones that I've interviewed, that this is a good question to ask for you guys, and that's that just about how each of you has studied music composition and songwriting and any of those things, that, you know, theory, orchestration, anything like that, anything that you guys are doing, how you studied it in any formal sense, or not necessarily like formal in the sense of going to school for it or taking lessons, but just studying it on your own in any kind of really focused way.
Greg,
I mean,
yeah.
I went to I graduated from the Cincinnati Conservatory of Music with a bachelor's degrees in classical guitar performance. So, and then on multiple occasions, I've gone to get my master's and then bailed on it because of the band. But
metal ruined your life.
I studied all of it in depth. So, does that? There's me done.
I knew it. I fucking knew one of you was a nerd.
I've done not any like as much formal training as like Greg, but like I took like jazz lessons for like 4 or 5 years. Don't remember any of it because at that time I just wanted to sweet pick, and my teacher would be like, "No, you're gonna learn Coltrane licks. I'm like, I don't wanna. But it's
I don't want to
that
have
and,
phrasing.
yeah.
I want
He was
to
like,
play
no,
all
you're
the-
gonna listen to this and like play over changes, be like, eh. And I'm like, oh wait, that actually helps now. But that and like if you're what you were saying with like analyzing music, like I think if I hear something cool, I try and figure out like what they did, how it's written, or like if I hear like a weird song structure where it's not like first chorus, or maybe it does have that or goes to something else and like completely changes. I just try to see what exactly they're doing and try and recreate as like maybe a task is like for fun, or just say screw it. 4/4. It's all 4/4.
Everything's 4/4 if you're not a nerd. So I grew up doing like choir, and as I got into high school and kind of continued to do singing stuff. So my high school didn't really have much for that as far as like in-school programs. So I started going to junior colleges for my electives, and I did like a jazz singers class. I did a couple of like theater singing classes. So I learned how to, sing as a group. I learned about things in singing like, forward momentum and utilizing your diphthongs and all that kind of stuff. More classically embedded vocal techniques. Once I started doing death metal, it was a lot of experimentation, obviously, because there's not really death metal classes. You know what I mean? Like there's a few people who teach it now, but back in 2000, 2001, when I was breaking ground on these styles, it was just listening to other metal artists and playing around with my voice. Unfortunately, I had enough of a foundation to kind of access parts of my voice that might have taken longer if I didn't. So I did that for a while, and then once I was in college, I continued to fill up my electives with music classes. So I took like a, intro, like fundamentals of music 1 type of thing, where I learned a little bit more about theory, my circle of fifths and my, like how to place things on a score and all that kind of stuff. I never learned how to sight read, unfortunately, but I'm also not very strong as an instrumentalist. So it's never really been something that I've needed to do a whole lot of. I did take a few classes for instruments that I don't play. Well, sort of. So I took a couple classes
How
that
else
were
are you
like
gonna
theory
learn?
and composition. Yeah, right. So it was like theory and composition, right?
Yeah.
So I learned about like how a woodwind functions and how it settles into a composition. I like you can't write, you can't score a piano part and then give it to an oboe player and be like, hey, do this. You know what I mean? Like you need to know how each instrument functions so that it can serve its place to, serve the composition and create a dynamic. So I learned a lot about that as far as like theory and composition stuff. I took a few of those classes during college, and that's kind of where my formal training ended. I try to apply as much of that as I can to vocals, but again, it's like I can't take a guitar line and be like, oh, let me do this with my voice. Like I can, but it sounds bad. So
Bro, you never heard Von Canto? Come on.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Have you heard that shit?
Oh god, is that band?
I fucking love that band, but it is a little ridiculous sometimes.
It's a choice.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's kind of my journey through formal musical education. Is I have a little bit of it. I'm definitely nowhere near someone like Greg, but I have enough to understand and get by. Carry my own in a conversation with people who are like Greg, at least to a certain extent, before they completely just lose me.
I'm curious about your studying the like poetry and stuff like that, because you mentioned a couple of poets and stuff. So like just from the language and I don't know, English studies, what do you call that?
like
learning words,
literary
new big
arts.
words,
Yeah.
literature, poetry, all
Yeah.
that kind of shit.
Literary arts, yes, those. Yeah.
What do you anything in that same general idea, studying that kind of stuff in any way?
Yeah, I mean, those things have helped me learn how to write lyrics in such a way that they can be read without the context of music. And I think that that's something that a lot of metal vocalists don't really do. It's like, here's a line of lyrics, here's a line of lyrics, here's a line of lyrics, and they're generally all like centrally themed, you know what I mean? Like they fit with each other. It's not just like random babble, but it's not the kind of thing where you can like read it long form and have it make sense. Like it reads much more like modern poetry. And so I think that knowing, you know, a little bit more than the average person about like classical writers and, you know, having read all the canon and all that kind of stuff, it's given me a better understanding of how to phrase things lyrically. You know, how to express a message while still being, you know, kind of flowery and having those you know, elements of imagery in it that like paint a picture and have a landscape, but still not just being you know, as staggered as some other vocalists can be.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of, especially in death metal or anything with harsh vocals, you can get away with a lot until it's time to make a lyric video. And then people are like, oh, that's what he's saying? Okay, that's bad. I although I feel like for some reason people always make lyric videos for the songs with the worst fucking lyrics. I don't know what it is. It's I don't know what that's a symptom of, but people will send in stuff on my stream and be like, we did a lyric video, and I'm like sitting there listening, and I'm just so distracted by how terrible and awkward the lyrics were, and I'm like, why? Don't do a lyric video. It's fine if you don't have good lyrics. Nobody has to know.
Yeah.
You know. But yeah, that's weird to me. Like I guess it's the emphasis is on something different. It's on the sound of it. I don't know, the feeling of the way the words sound or something. But yeah, that seems to be a big problem, especially in metal. And I think that's a little bit of why, more so than any of the stylistic stuff that I think people normally think is the barrier for other people to get into metal who wouldn't normally. And I think actually lyrics are a big part of that, because if you don't put a lot into that, that's the thing that most people gravitate towards. Forget how they're delivered. You know, like, sure, my dad will probably never like Love Dying Fetus, you know, like, or those, you know, any kind of growly, screamy vocals. But like, if the lyrics are heartfelt and well written, I think it matters a lot less. And I feel like metal on the whole hasn't really gotten that. So it's very, very refreshing to hear you just care about it that much more than anything else. That makes me very happy.
Yeah, I think that honestly it's a byproduct of the fact that like vocals aren't usually what draws people into metal. You know what I mean? Like it's the music, it's the musical performance. Like, you know, like the musicianship is always such a high caliber. You know what I mean? Like people will hear something that Greg or Mikey does, like hear one of their solos and be like, that's what's going to get them into a Legion. You know what I mean? Like just the phenomenal playing and like this just impressive showcasing of like, yo, like I shred. You know, I think that people aren't gonna, you know, it's much less likely for someone to be like, yeah, when he was like stars torn asunder, exploding into dust, I really resonated with me. You know what I mean? Like it's like, but then there's other parts of that song that people are gonna be like, oh my god, the way that lead line comes in is so sick, and like, oh, I love what the drums did or something like that. So I think that it's because, you know, I don't want to go so far as to say that vocals are an afterthought in metal, but sometimes, you know what I mean? Like, and even when they are, you know, constructed like you were saying, it's like it's less about the lyrical message more than it's about kind of what I was saying earlier about how the vocals are like a percussive addition to the music. Like they create a dynamic, but they don't do it from a melodic space. It's usually, very, abrasive and choppy and stuff like that. And it sounds more like a percussive instrument than a melodic one. So, I get it. I get where it comes from most times. And I understand why a lot of people who are like really phenomenal guitar players and are like, oh, well, this band needs a vocalist. I guess I'll just do it. And we'll just kind of, figure out how to like, and just kind of put it on top, because it's like, that's all you need. You know what I mean? The bar for what's passable vocally in metal, I think, is a lot lower than the other instruments. But that's not necessarily to say just because there's a low barrier for entry that you need to live there. So I try to, not just skate when I'm writing. I try to, put as much into it as I can, because it's like, I look at the dudes I play with, you know what I mean? Like if they're delivering to the point where they deliver, you know what I mean? Like if I'm listening to something that Greg wrote or something that Michael wrote or just anything from the band, and I don't match that energy or like try my best to like meet that level of musicianship, like I shouldn't be the vocalist, in my opinion. So yeah, that's kind of the long version of where I think that phenomenon in metal and vocals comes from.
This is the place for the long version. That's why I made this podcast. I want to hear all of that shit. So keep that in mind, you guys. Like,
yeah.
If you, that was the other reason. I know we had that discussion, Riley, about like, the emotional like impact of vocals. Like the performance would just be better if you're emotionally invested. And we had that talk. I remember pacing around my old living room, having that talk on the phone, going, oh yeah, like, if I'm super emotionally involved in these things, I can convey that a little bit easier than, if I'm talking about microorganisms. And
yeah,
that was one of the things that was like, yeah, you know what? If it's going to be better, then maybe we should, make the switch over.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely want to have, and it's not that like when I would write about stuff like exothermic chemical combustion or extremophiles and stuff like that, like it was still all very interesting to me. It just wasn't me, you know what I mean? Like it didn't come from within. It came from like, it was an external source of information that I then absorbed and kind of transformed into like my own version of it that I felt I could like express in a cool way. But it just became, not necessarily easier for me, but more natural for me, I guess, to, write from inside and kind of put that out rather than taking things inside and then regurgitating them in my own way.
Yeah. I think that the thing that you were saying about like vocals being an afterthought, like I think unfortunately in metal that's true more often than not. And I guess I think it would be weird, the thing that you were describing, like, oh, like the guy in the band plays guitar and he writes a song, so he's like, all right, I guess I'll like learn to do some vocals just so that there's vocals, so that there's something. But like you're a dedicated vocalist. That's your job. You don't play another instrument in the band. Like there's no reason why like you can't also care very deeply about it, make it very do a great job of it, make real poetic things or whatever, like write great lyrics that people will really care about, that will resonate with people, like you said. And I've always been like, heard certain bands and been like why wouldn't you just do that? Why wouldn't you just go like spend a little time on it? And especially when there are dudes out there like yourself and like Trevor from Black Dahlia. Like I fucking love his lyrics, like and there's so many other bands out there who kind of sound like Black Dahlia maybe, or like same general style. They do everything great, but like there are other bands who like, I don't know, maybe shred harder or whatever, or not a lot, but fucking then he's got these lyrics and it just hits me in the fucking gut every time, and I'm like, all of this together is what makes it great. Like a billion bands shred, but like the lyrical content is what's going to bring people back every time. Otherwise, your audience is going to wind up being mostly musicians. Like, yeah, like you're saying, like people are like, oh, these guys shred. Like I think that because I play guitar, and like other, the average metal fan might also think that that's kind of cool. But like, yeah, what brings people back is more often than not a lot like really good vocals across styles of music. And then it feels like metal's starting to get there. They're starting to realize like, oh, yeah, that's important. Like, and I don't know if you've experienced this, but like when I started writing stuff that I was singing, it helped me care about the songs a lot more, and it made me want to do more work to make the songs better and to go out and play them and all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to touch on something real quick though, is that like something that always drew me to Allegiant even before I was in the band is that like I think that that's what really separates Allegiant and has contributed so much to the band's success, is that like it's technical, but it's not just musicians' music. You know what I mean? Like there's always been stuff in the music that has that accessibility. You know what I mean? Like there's like sick like dual guitar leads, and like even within the solos there's these like really catchy little earworms and stuff like that. And I think that that's something that the musicians in the band have always done. And I know that, Greg for a long time wanted to have like that met by like clean vocals and stuff like that, but just like, couldn't do it. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't within the wheelhouse of the old vocalist. And even after I came in, it was like, oh, we don't want to just like dive right into this pool of like, oh, hey, now we have clean vocals type of thing. But I think that that's something that this band particularly has always been very conscious of like, yeah, we're going to attract musicians because we play fucking death metal. But at the same time, there's always super catchy shit like within the music. And I think that that's something that has, like I said, contributed a lot to Allegiant's success over the years. But yeah, that being said, it is important to be invested in it and care about it. I know Greg has also written tons of lyrics for Allegiant. Some of the songs that Greg and I have collaborated on lyrically, like when I first joined the band and a bunch of shit for Proponent for Sentience was already written, are like some of the best songs on that album. You know what I mean? It just leads back to that like collaborative nature of making music together. You know what I mean? Like I think that a huge part of why we were able to shift is because like we all really respect each other as musicians. You know what I mean? Like I don't think there's any weak links in this band. I think that everyone brings something to the table that is unique to them and their experience, and it puts them above a lot of other players, to be frank about it. And I think that being able to see that in each other and admire it in each other is something that has made our music and our songwriting process, become what it is today. So it's not only caring about the music, I guess, like it's important obviously to like care about the music and be attached to it and, have that heart towards what you're doing. But I think that like the fact that we all care so much about each other also is visible in our songs.
Who are you?
That is the sweetest thing
except these guys.
Anybody
Except
said
these guys.
on one of these
I don't
podcasts
care about them
so far.
I don't care about them at all.
You're like present company excluded.
Yeah.
Fucking adorable and super sweet and true. There's a lot of bands where people fucking hate each other, and I was always like, how do you do that? How are you in a band with somebody you don't like or respect? Like what the like? Just, I mean, sometimes you spend too long in a van with somebody and you figure out that you're not particularly compatible as friends, but like Jesus. So that's great to hear, if nothing else.
Yeah. Well, and that's not to say that we don't have flare-ups here and there. You know what I mean? Like, it's you do spend a month with someone in a van, and it's just like, God, this guy's getting on my fucking nerves. But like, that's that's not gonna make me be like, yeah, fuck this guy forever. You know what I mean? Like, there's
Yeah.
A family like anything else,
Yeah. Definitely more of a family.
Being in a band is extremely hard.
Yeah.
Dealing with a whole bunch of other people's personalities. It's like, what's the divorce rate in the U.S.?
Yeah.
Apply that times 5, like.
Yeah.
I want to know what do you think that's something that you guys do that nobody else is doing? Do you think that there's something that is very specific to Allegion that you guys do compositionally or whatever that you don't really hear in other bands?
I think what Greg brings to the table is something very unique to this band. I think that like Greg's knowledge of music and his ability to incorporate like so many different styles of classical performance into Allegion is something that not a lot of other bands do. And that's not to say that other bands don't, have like acoustic sections or classical sections even, but I don't think that anyone does it like Greg. So that's my thing. I think we do different.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a hard thing to dissect your own thing and then compare it to others. I mean, I can say that it's trying to always be catchy so that you can grab not only just metal audience, but the wide audience. I mean, that's always kind of been like the mission statement, as it were. It's got to be hooky, like hook is king, right? We're already in like a very niche genre in a niche genre. So it's super important to try to appeal to many people as possible while, maintaining what you are fundamentally. So.
Cool. Mikey? Anything?
No, I think it's definitely going back to like kind of what Riley said. Like, I just think especially with who we have now, it's just every single member is bringing something different, something new, and like at high caliber levels. Again, not saying that other bands are trash, but they are. No, but
like I'm amazing.
Oh yeah, that fucking.
If Mikey was drunk for this interview,
it was my first NAMM being 21, and Frank from Metal Injection found me, and I was like so over all the fucking like Hollywood like artist people wearing sunglasses inside. So then I was drunk, and he was just like, "What's really hard for you to play?" And I was like, "Nothing's hard for me. I'm amazing." Just try, but no one realized. Like, I think some people didn't realize that I was like just being an ass and like totally joking for the entire thing. They're like, "What the fuck is with this dude?" Like,
holy shit.
But okay, but yeah. So I don't really know like a other group where, again, like what Riley said, like we don't really have a weakest link. And yeah.
The guy who thinks that there's no weakest link is always the weakest link.
Yeah, I could say.
Oh yeah, I've said it before. Like, no shit, now I am.
You're like, oh wait.
Well, I want to add kind of what Greg said, where it's like it's hard to look at your own product and dissect it that way. Like, I don't think any of us go into the songwriting process being like, okay, what are we going to do different than what everybody else is doing? You know what I mean? Like, we just kind of write our songs. And it comes out a certain way that I think is unique because we're all coming from places of different influences. But it's tough to look at it and be like, yeah, what's this one thing that we have that no one else has that is totally unique to us, because we don't really go into writing our songs with something like that in mind.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about then, because you mentioned influences. Was there anything that you guys were listening to, either during the making of or before, that that you feel like had a profound influence on the writing process, or even just a small one?
I think to everyone's chagrin, I was listening to a lot of like up and coming deathcore stuff, and I think that definitely colored some of my vocal performance. Taking notes from dudes like Ben from Shadow of Intent, or Joe from Fit for an Autopsy and stuff, like listening to what these very highly lauded deathcore vocalists, even like Dave from Signs of the Swarm, or obviously Travis from Cattle has always been a huge good friend and a huge inspiration of mine. But I think that was definitely something that I had not I never really liked deathcore, like for a long time, and only really in this most recent wave of it, because deathcore kind of has always gone in waves. You know what I mean? It's always had like, okay, well, it's like, you look back to like the early mid 2000s where bands like Suicide Silence and Whitechapel were kind of coming up, and it was more had that like MySpace core type of stuff attached to it. And then there was like another wave of deathcore where it was more death than core, you know what I mean? But then it had the big, long, slow breakdowns and stuff like that. And with this most recent wave, it's like blackened deathcore, and I think that's what kind of grabbed me, because I have always listened to black metal and vibed with it. And so when that kind of hooked me into the genre, I started hearing more things about it that I could appreciate. And I think that deathcore is kind of at a point now where it's like your vocalist is what determines the merit of your band. So I took a lot of influence, I think, from some of my peers in the deathcore community.
I don't really know what I was listening to. A lot of kind of like going back to things that I think when I found like as a teenager, like the early like Morbid Angel records and stuff like that, and then seeing how to kind of make or see what I liked from them, and like messing around. Like I think the one riff in like Only Loss, just me listening to a lot of Morbid Angel. Just be like, hey, just make it really gross and heavy. And then definitely some like black metal stuff. Like going back, a lot of going back, like finding older records that I liked, and then kind of seeing what I liked about them, and kind of trying to recreate those same feelings, I guess.
Cool.
My stuff is always going to be different than my fellow band members. Mostly like mellow death stuff for me a lot, and then I of course listen to a lot of psychropic, and then actually the newest artist that I would listen to on this is Soen. Like a student showed me Soen, and I got really into a few of the songs that we were learning in our lessons. And so, I mean, people are like hearing Opeth. I'm like, you might be hearing Soen instead of Opeth, really. But yeah.
Cool.
That's very interesting. I think that's the first time I've heard that from you.
Yeah.
Which makes a lot of sense. Soen rules.
I'm interested that all of you said metal bands. I mean, I guess like obviously that you guys play metal, but I figure I guess I've noticed a lot of metal bands like will kind of get a little burnt out on it and listen to like in their home listen to other stuff because they're making death metal all the time. Then they're like, all right, we go home and listen to something chill.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I know for me and Mikey especially is like, the analogy I always use when people are like, oh, you don't really listen to that much metal, is I'm just like, bro, if you worked in a pizza parlor for 10 years and people are like, oh, what's your favorite kind of pizza? You're like, I don't eat pizza anymore. But at the same time, I think that there's like a weird kind of pretentious fart sniffy thing among metal musicians where they like pride themselves on not listening to metal. Yeah. And I'm just like, bro, like, I know you still listen to metal. You know what I mean? Like, you can't make metal without listening to it every once in a while, and like that's why we make it, is because we listened to it at one point, I'm sure exclusively, and like, you know, it's silly to like, just because you've moved on and found other interests in different styles of music, to like discount the fact that like you're still a metalhead when it boils down to it. But yeah, I definitely listen to a lot of not metal. But you know, if I'm gonna share, you know, what, you know, influenced my vocal performance on my most recent death metal album, I'm not going to be like, well, I was listening to a lot of Bats and I love him, and so that's what made me do what I did. Like, because that's just not the case.
It's a good point.
Despite the fact that I do listen to a lot of Bats and I really like him.
I did phrase it in such a way that was how much it influenced the writing.
Yeah.
So I guess that I should consider that the next time I ask that question. You're like, I was listening to a lot of this one band, Allegion.
Yeah.
Ew.
We sound just like them. Here's one that I feel like it's a little weird asking, because I keep asking this in a time when live shows aren't really happy. I mean, they're coming back, and it's been kind of like this, you know, a lot of them get announced and then canceled, and some of them are happening, some of them aren't. When you're writing songs, do you often consider whether or not they will pop off in a live scenario?
Somewhat, yeah. It's we kind of don't know what'll work live until it's kind of at the end, like vocals are on it and it's kind of all like finalized, and then you can kind of see, just even while like maybe practicing it at home, be like, oh, okay, this should work really well live, or this maybe won't, or like will be just a different vibe. But yeah, I usually can't really tell until it's like at the end.
I mean, sometimes we think songs are going to go over live and they bomb.
Yeah.
Like,
oh yeah, this is gonna be great. It's gonna be the emotional end. Be like, that bored everyone. Don't ever do that again.
It was like we made that rule: no subdivisions live.
Yeah.
The energy out. I think we did, for 2 tours, and then it was just like, yeah, no more.
Yeah.
Everybody liked it, but they just.
Yeah, it's like, here's the energy level before, and then.
And then you have to like spend the rest of the set trying to get it back up to that. You know what I mean? Like. Yeah, definitely some of that. I think that I do think about what will go over well live sometimes, as far as like what can people like sing along to. But again, it's like you have to meter your expectations. Like you have to, you know, as much as I would love to go out on this next tour and play Beasts and Worms and have everybody singing along with the chorus, like it might just not be that way. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like I think about it, but it's not like a driving creative force. I'm not ever usually like, oh, this is like the live song. This is the one that everybody's going to be, you know, chanting to and stuff like that. But if it works out that way, then great.
I usually have hunches on what song is not going to work. I usually can tell you what is not going to work when I'm playing it for a tour, getting in rehearsal for tour. Mm-hmm. So I have one on this upcoming tour that I'm like, I don't think the song's going to work. I think it flows brilliantly, but I don't think it's going to work.
Name names. Call out. Yeah. No. This is now a call out podcast.
Guys, that's right. Because what if like
we're taking over?
It works really well, and I put that out into the universe, and I curse it. Yeah. I'm going to keep it to myself until we're in a room together, and I'm going to go, guys.
Yeah. Write it down on a piece of paper, put it in a sealed envelope, and mail it to yourself. And then when you come back from tour, make a video, open it up, and be like, see? I fucking knew it!
Library.
It sounds like money laundering for like bad energies. Just like if I don't put it out into the universe in a conversation, you know, if I put it in an envelope and then I send it out, like that kind of it confuses the spirits.
But if you, I know what you mean. Like people like, I mean, all 10 people and my mom who listen to this podcast will be like, oh yeah, you're right. They'll be standing there at your show and they'll be like, oh, here comes that song. Yeah, he's right. This isn't really working live.
Yeah.
I was gonna mosh, but I'm not now. Fuck
Yeah.
that.
Thanks, Craig.
Thanks, Greg. Greg, the ruiner of fun.
Yeah.
That's awesome though. That you're not that you're not fucking letting it. I don't know. I think it can be very important, but it can also be a big distraction from the songwriting process. Like, yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on what kind of band you are. You know, like if you are mostly concerned with the big live show and less so about your, I don't know, streaming. Like if you got to go out on tour, and like if your songs suck live, then that sucks no matter what. Like, but if that's your primary concern, you might not make very, very interesting music that satisfies you. So that's something that I always ask, because some people are like, oh no, that's everything. Like that's was it Putney? I think last week I asked Will Putney because I was curious about it, because he doesn't tour with the band. So I'm like, are you thinking about, sending these boys out on the road with us really good songs for live? And he was, because he hadn't mentioned it throughout the whole interview, and he was like, oh yeah, I mean, that's just always in the forefront of my mind, to the point where I don't even really consciously think about it anymore, but it's just habit, and I'm really very concerned about it, but I don't consciously think about it. Something like that. So I'm glad that I asked.
Well, I think there's a lot of different ways to translate it. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, we write really technical music. Sometimes it's hard to mosh to. Sometimes it's hard to, jump around to, and it doesn't, have necessarily the same, simplicity that other genres of metal might have that cater more to that. But the thing is that, like, energy is contagious. You know what I mean? So it's like when we go up on stage, we pull our fucking balls out. You know what I mean? Like, we put everything into our performance and bring that energy to the stage. And whether or not, the music is, going to be some like 4/4 breakdown banger that everybody can just like, tear the place apart to, I think that they see us performing and it like hypes them up and makes them want to, meet that energy and match it. So I think that it's just like knowing your music, knowing your audience, and like knowing how to not only be a musician but also be a performer is like the holy trinity of playing live.
Absolutely. So I'm curious about something that I find this related in the sense that it's a lot of times you write stuff that you think is great. It's a certain thing. Then you wind up playing it for a long time, and you start to kind of see it through the eyes of the audience to a certain extent, because you play it and you get the energy back, or you don't, and then you go like, oh shit, like we're not doing that again, or whatever. Like kind of like when you show a friend a song that you're working on, and the second that you hit play, you realize all the stuff that's wrong. You see it clear as day, and then you're just like, fuck, how did I miss that? Whatever. Is there anything that you guys have done on previous albums that you like consciously were like, we're never doing that again?
Covers.
Yeah.
Other than that,
They were fun.
Even though they did pretty fucking good.
No, they did great, but that's kind of the problem, is that like we're not a cover band.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like when our covers are getting more traction than our originals, like that's a problem. That's a, so I think that like not having covers on the track listing of an album is something that we probably won't do again. But that's just my thing that I think I've noticed we've, cut the fat from over the years.
Anything else?
Yeah, I don't have anyone. Covers one's good. That's definitely true.
That's awesome. I mean, and you fucking.
Sorry, that's a
You're
boring
confident.
question. Get one answer out of the three of us.
No, that's great. I mean, if there's nothing, then even better. Like, I want honest answers. Don't fucking stroke my ego. Don't make me feel good. I want the truth. Give me the truth. Okay, great. Here's one. Are there any really systematic aspects of the way that you go about writing songs? Is there anything that, like, once you've got, like, for example, a theme, a motif, some kind of musical idea or something, is there anything, like, really systematic that you go about, like, a very certain way, not necessarily for every song, but anything that you, like, you really do in a very very structured way?
Maybe for like I think going back to like the song structure thing, where it's just like I actively thinking about like verses and choruses and all that, unless it ends up being something that started on where it's not like it's gonna be something different, more like freeform structure type thing. That's usually what, if it's like if there's any systematic stuff for me, it's usually just trying to be like, okay, let's figure out the parts, make sure they all work, make sure they're all strong and able to kind of stand out on their own and then also work together. So
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have one. I would say flow. Like that's my biggest pet peeve. It's like the stuff has to flow together without any jerky movement for my ears. But apart from that, I don't know. I think if you're too systematic, it gets sterile really quick. And so I don't know. Like maybe you do something subconsciously, but not consciously. I would steer away from that as much as possible.
Are there any tricks that you do to keep that flow, that stuff that you do to make parts flow together better or whatever?
I mean, I would say voice leading and then resolution of tension, harmonic, but that could be, everything, especially I've been studying jazz pretty heavily for the last, I don't know, year since COVID's happening, and just studying more like, advanced forms of dissonance and resolution when you start dealing with more than just, your tertian, sonorities. So
I've been waiting this whole time to hear you say tertial sonorities.
Tertian sonorities? I said it, and I was like, you asshole.
I've just been goading you in that direction the whole time. Say it.
Over here, tertian sonorities.
Tertian sonorities.
Do you have extended sonorities? We do.
We do.
Hate myself so much.
If it helps, I hate you too.
Yeah.
No, that's great. So you're thinking harmonically more than anything else, more so than I don't know, bass drops.
I mean, I would say one of two ways, like making sure your voice leads into the next part, or like harmonically it resolves, or your your cadence, like one of those big pop tricks is when it goes to a bridge, it's the deceptive cadence. So instead of your 5-to-1 movement, your 5-to-6, like that was, that's a good one that you can throw in there every once in a while. But do that too much, and then it becomes systematic.
I think it's cool because I noticed that you guys have really good voice leading. I noticed that your voice leading is great, especially with those tertian. But what I think is really important about that is that you have these, like I was saying, these very adventurous chord changes, and I think that people don't realize how crazy you can get if you have really good voice leading. You can do stuff like that, and it doesn't sound crazy wild. It just feels right, but it feels more. You feel this huge pull, these nice undercurrents moving you from place to place, and it doesn't just sound like, but it like really well harmonized and stuff like that. So,
the ABBA trick.
Yeah. What do you?
Elaborate, Michael. Elaborate on the
Oh,
ABBA
yeah,
have you
track.
ever
let's hear
like deconstructed ABBA's music? It's insane.
I have not, but
Like it's like exactly what you're saying, where it's like it all flows and it's all like doesn't not jarring or anything, but like you look at the score and it's changing like all these substitutions and everything for all of it. So let's listen to more ABBA, metal people.
listen
Love
to
of
more
God.
ABBA.
Okay, Dancing
Boom.
Queen.
That's,
Learn it.
That's going to be the fucking headline to this
Perfect.
interview. Listen to more ABBA.
What have you done? What-
Ruined your metal cred. It's all gone.
I thought for sure it was going to be tertian sonorities, but, or whatever the fuck you said.
That's fuck. Yes, ABBA's fucking great. Super underrated. I have not really dissected their shit, but like now I really want to. Is there anything that you're doing? I guess like it's a little tough it's a little tough some of the time. It's very tough all of the time is what I'm trying to say with guitar, because the fucking guitar, like there's this like, you know, power chords sound great because it's a fifth and the fucking just the harmonics when there's so much gain, you know, like so people tend to stick to that kind of stuff. How are you so then, you know, power chords and like lead melodies, and that tends to be the way that it goes. But how are you doing this great voice leading with that dichotomy being the usual thing? How do you get past that?
Well, I mean, if they're riffs, you have a little bit more leeway because you're not dealing with just, you know, those two notes, right? And then it can kind of play. Mike has some really, really interesting chords where he'll keep a static note and then move his bass note around. So you end up doing all this crazy shit with one, you know, like almost like a pedal point, but it's just kind of like a bass note's moving over static.
So like an upper pedal tone instead of a lower one. That's the fucking every metal riff in history over a low open string.
Which is
you're doing the hard way.
It's almost like a singer-songwriter with the slash chords. How they have, you know, it's like an A minor, but you're playing an F on the bass. And Mike does that a lot with a lot of his chords, where he has a chord set there, but he almost treats it like a singer-songwriter, where the chord still stays there, but the bass note is constantly altering.
Yeah, it's like try and make it still sound coherent, but like more interesting.
Yeah. So I mean, ultimately, I think there's the whole orchestration across three instruments, the two guitars and bass, that is that we keep in mind a lot, right? Because if you just focus on one guitar part, you kind of really almost have to just stay really simple because it gets muddy real quick. But if you spread the voices out amongst three, then you get a lot of clarity, especially, and then you can be super restorative and confident. So
awesome.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Or did I
lose?
Okay.
I noticed a lot of really intricate arpeggios in your music, and I that was the first thing that I thought of, is that if you're not playing all of the notes on top of each other at once, you could probably get away with a lot more because you don't have to if you separate them out by instrument, but also within time, within the measure, you still get the feeling of this arpeggio, of this chord, but now it's arpeggiated, and then you can do really awesome voice leading within that. But I don't want to answer the question for you. That was just the first thing that I thought of, that I heard in your stuff.
No, I think you're right. Another thing is like if you're having like a big like kind of shreddy section or something like that, or arpeggiated section, at least for me, if you try and like keep a little bit less melodic content or like some unnecessary notes in the rhythm voicing, it kind of leaves it to be more open. So like you can do like, I do a lot of octaves and like that descending bass note thing where you're then kind of doing like a 9 chord with it, but you're still getting the same like melodic content that you need for that part if it's like minor, major or whatever, but it's not getting as muddy. So it's letting it not be as like overwhelming.
Yeah.
A little bit clearer.
Oh boy, those are the kinds of answers I'm trying to dig out of you. That's gold to me. This is all really good, but those are the juicy nuggets your boy is looking for. That's fascinating. Mainly because I haven't really heard that out of any other bands before. You guys are really thinking about that kind of shit. And that to me is the jam.
Le jam.
The jam. Well, I'm wondering, like, okay, here's one. Is there anything? Okay. What is it that you are generally trying to achieve? You talked a little bit about the sort of mission statement for the band. Is there something that you are typically trying to achieve when you're writing these songs? Like something that all of your cannons are pointed at, that you feel like, even if you don't name it as you're doing it, that you're like, we are trying to achieve this with all of this.
I mean, I think like what Greg said about it just being hooky, you know what I mean? Like having memorable music, like music that isn't a chore to listen to. Like if there's one thing that we always talk about, or something that's been like widely acknowledged within the group, it's that like the song is the most important thing. You know what I mean? Like whether I want to put this part in or someone else wants to do this one thing, like if it's not going to work with the song, like it needs to be viewed as a secondary. And I think that we're always, from song to song being like, what's going to make this the best version that it can be. And again, I think that that's a thing that it's like you said, it's like not really something that we think about super actively as we're writing, but definitely as we're moving the needle forward on where the song is going. You know what I mean? Like it's that thing that all of our cannons are pointed at, is it's just like, how are we going to make this song the best song that it can be? Which sounds kind of generic and cliche now that I'm saying it out loud, but like, I think that it's true. It's like the end product of the song is king. That's what guides us through our writing process.
I don't think that's generic at all. I mean, especially since nobody else has said that yet.
Well, I just figure it's like everybody wants to make good songs, right? Like that's it's like we want to make good songs. That's what guides us. Like duh. Like
could have been worse. You could have said Tertian and sonorities.
Yeah.
We just want to be ABBA 2, Electric Boogaloo, but with tertian sonorities.
Exactly.
We're going to the next level, quartal sonorities.
Yes.
That's where the science part of the band comes in. You guys are like, what if it was hexaseptuple sonorities? How do we achieve? Where do we get that?
None of us are that good at math.
All those fucking memes about like bands with odd time signatures and the math pits, like what they do in the like a Dream Theater mosh pit, and it's just a bunch of math. You guys fucked up. That could have been you, but you playing.
I mean, I am in engineering school.
Stupid wanting to make songs.
So one of you is good at math, at least then.
Kind of.
That's cool. And then so that's why you're the guy who programs the patch changes.
Yeah.
Is that what your degree is in?
Yeah, it's from Fractal University. It's yeah. How to make it go from one to the other in a millisecond.
That's all you need.
Pain in the ass. I hate it.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
I still have to do that. I don't know.
All right, so I keep saying that I'm going to be giving people this question in advance so that you can think about it. But I fucked up and I didn't do that. So I'm going to spring it on you in the moment, which so far has not worked at all, but it's a work in progress. The final question. It's basically like, what is the single song that has influenced, do you think, each of you the most? Not just your favorite one, but the one that you think has influenced how you go about what you do the most, more than any other. If you can't think of a single song, then maybe an album. And you can take a second to think about it. We'll let the dead air exist.
This is one of those questions that it's like, I think time is important. You know what I mean? Because it's like, influenced me how? Like, influenced me becoming a metal vocalist? Like, influenced me with this last record? Like, it's very different answers to those two versions.
I will say what's influenced the way that you write more than anything else, on the whole, for the entirety of your musical career so far, not just this album.
Midian by Cradle of Filth, easily. Like that, I had not only never heard vocal performance like Danny Filth does on that album, but I had never seen anyone write lyrics that were so close to like academic level poetry. Like his understanding of the English language is outrageous. And I think that like that's really where it all started for me, was like, how do I do this? How do I have this insanely wide range as a vocalist? Like how do I do that like he does it? And then not only that, but how do I like paint these pictures and tell these creepy gothic stories, you know, this almost Lovecraftian type of storytelling? Like how do I accomplish that at the same time as being just this like vocalist who to my 13-year-old mind could do anything? So yeah, for sure, Midian by Cradle of Filth. That album is what sent me down this road.
Great answer.
Mine would probably be Trace and Air from Cynic. It's like when I found that record, it was kind of like that, like the scene in Wizard of Oz where it goes from like black and white to color, because I was only listening to like certain types of bands like thrash metal, stuff like that. Found that, and then just saw how like songwriting in metal could be completely different and like way more open, way more melodic, and super still memorable. Like you can pretty much sing in like any parts of Trace and Air, and like that's always just stuck with me.
Great answer.
I think I would have to go with Images and Words a little bit. Just from, you know, big chord usage to space between the instruments to shred to like more techie type rhythm, kind of had it all, you know.
Awesome. Fuck yes. I also love that even though I can hear all of that stuff in your music, it like I wouldn't say that you sound like any of that, except that you've taken those things that you mentioned and it just kind of comes out in your own way. All of all three of you mentioned. I don't hear like, it doesn't sound like you took any of that stuff, like you are, I don't know, like trying to sound like that, but you took the things that they do well and you tried to do things as good in that same general idea. I love that. And I think that's a great spot for us to end. And so thank you guys so much for taking the time and for giving me very thoughtful answers, especially when I ask fucking weird ass questions. I'm sure most other interviewers are like, so how's the tour going? And I'm over here like, tertial sonorities, I want more. So thank you so much for taking the time. And this is your chance to plug the shit out of all of your stuff. I want to hear it. Where can people find the things that you want them to find, and what are they?
I mean, obviously the new record, DAMNUM, out February 25th on Metal Blade Records. You can get it by going to metalblade.com/allegion. That'll link you out to whatever your regional store is in the U.S. North American landmass. It's through Night Shift merch. I believe overseas it is through Kings Road. Yeah, I mean, we have a tour coming up with Omnium Gatherum that leaves, I believe, like the day after the album comes out on February 26th. It's a full US Canada run. And that's going to be with Omnium Gatherum and Black Crown Initiate. We have, some stuff lined up for Europe later down the year. In November, December, we had to push a tour we were going to do with Archspire, Rivers of Nile, Black Crown, and To the Grave. It was supposed to happen last November, but obviously, COVID. So we're pushing that to this upcoming November, and that's everything that we have as a band that's on the books right now. Obviously, our Patreon is still active, always has been, probably always will be. We post once a week, even if it's just a small update. We actually just posted some unique to the platform content just yesterday, I want to say. So, you can find us there if that's the level of support that you're comfortable with. We are always grateful to have people on there. I think that's it. Oh no, Sheet Happens. We have tab books.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. We have tab books that, like, for the first time in our careers ever, only took us five albums to get there, but now we have them. It's a new thing for us, and I know that it's something that has been requested to Greg and Mikey a lot over the years. So head over to Sheet Happens and check out Allegiant stuff. I think we have two albums on the slate for
yeah, Apoptosis is out now, and then DAMNUM should be coming out. Yeah, so it's
March
pretty much
3rd.
right.
We will have them for tour.
Yeah.
So if you come to the tour, you can get them before they're out to everyone else.
You'll be able to learn songs that you haven't even heard yet.
Oh yeah, brother.
Although I guess if it's on tour, it starts the day after the album comes out. So
yeah. And that will begin because we're gonna do all the records going backwards from after DAMNUM's out. So the beginning of a lot of music for people to play.
So that's sheethappens.com.
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. That's a lot of work. That is a fucking endeavor. You guys play a lot of notes. So if you want to learn all of this, how to do awesome voice leading and tertian sonorities on the guitar that you didn't know existed, that's the fucking place to do it. And if you want to hear them, go see these boys on tour. They're going to be crabby from smelling each other in the van. So your ticket money and banging your heads to all of the songs, okay, even the ones that they didn't think were gonna pop off, is gonna be the best way to support them. New album is fucking awesome. I will actually listen to this one, not
Unlike
just for
all the
research, unlike all the other ones. So check all that out. I put links in the description where you guys can find the stuff as well. Thank you guys so much. Good luck with the tour. Good luck with the album drop. I'm very excited to see how it goes. Hopefully I'll get to come out and see you when you play LA.
Yeah, play in LA, of course.
Great.
Yeah. Hang out.
It's fucking half the reason I live here is because everything comes through, and then the world fell apart. Great. So very excited for that. Have a great week, and we'll see you all real soon, okay?
Oh yeah, man. Always good talking to you.
Bye,
Take care.
dudes. Thank you so much. See ya. All right. Hell yes. Hell yes. God, that gets me so pumped. Super awesome interview. Very excited about that. Thank you guys all so much for watching at home. This is now the 7th episode of the How Songs Are Made podcast. This will also be available as an audio podcast in the future. I'm releasing them one a week on Wednesdays, so make sure that you are subscribed on your or following or whatever on your favorite podcast service. So you'll be able to hear the sort of back catalog will be dropping as I'm recording new episodes and having them edited and all that. And I do this every week at the same time, except this coming week. Europeans are going to love this for a number of reasons. Number one, I'm going to be miserable because it's going to be at 9 a.m. PST. All right. Oh boy. I'm going to have to get up early for the next week's episode, but it's going to be worth it because I'm going to get one of my all-time heroes and one of my very favorite songwriters of all time, Arjen Anthony Lucassen, from the band ALLEGAEON and Star One. Finally, something that's not death metal, actually. It's been a lot of death metal so far. I hadn't really noticed that, actually. But some really proper melodic shit. I don't know if you guys have ever listened to ALLEGAEON or to Star One. Like really top-notch, heavy songwriting. A little over the top and very theatrical. I discovered this dude's music the first time that I ever went to Germany. Walked into one of these huge German record stores, and they had those like little stations where they'd have an album on a little Discman, and you could just like listen. And I opened up the fucking liner notes, and it was just like the guests on this album were just like every band that I loved, every prog and metal musician. And it was Flight of the Migrator, that album. And my 17-year-old brain exploded. Fucking. So I'm so ready to have him on. So next week, we're going to get a completely different perspective, a totally different perspective on the whole thing from a very different, not just style of music, but a very different way of looking at it, I'm very sure. So I think you're definitely going to want to to tune in for that. Thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to check out the new merch. There's a link to where you can find all of the different podcast streaming services. And of course, if you haven't already, mash that subscribe button, smack the bell, and join the notification squad and leave me a comment. I want to know who you want to see on the podcast. I'm very curious about that. So, from the How Songs Are Made podcast, I'm Trey Xavier. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you real soon.